Hi guys, this is Jim Life Coach. So I'm gonna be doing a bonus edition now, and I'm gonna be reading an article that I've seen just now. So let's have a listen. This is about coronavirus schools return, and it's about the return of pupils to schools in Europe and possibly in the UK soon. So can you really keep children 2 meters apart? That is a burning question. Reopening schools is going to be one of the biggest symbolic steps towards loosening the lockdown. It has divided opinion about whether it can be safe and who should go back first. But there are places such as Denmark and Germany where it's already happening. There was anxiety in the community, says Don Maher, about the international section of St. Joseph's School in Roskilde on the Danish island of Zealand. A large percentage of parents were in two minds, he says, and there were some who decided to wait a few days to see. But almost 3 weeks after reopening, he thinks it has worked better than might have expected. Children were relieved to be back, and parents have become more confident about safety, and numbers attending schools have steadily risen. Primary school children have returned first in Denmark, and a system is in place to keep children in small groups with as little contact with others as possible. They spend their school day in a kind of virtual cocoon with no crossover with others. These micro groups of pupils arrive at separate time. Eat their lunch separately, stay in their own zones in the playground, and are taught by one teacher. There are about a dozen pupils in these groups. Social distancing means that's about the maximum number who can go into one room, which requires dividing classes and teaching staff. Most schools in Denmark are structured where you have primary and lower secondary in the same school, says Mr. Mayer. That means there is space to spread out, with only about half of the usual 1,000 pupils on site. We've had enough classrooms to do that. In school opening, if school opening went ahead, where all students were back, it would be a real struggle, says the head. We wouldn't have enough classrooms and would have to start doing morning and afternoon shifts. The other linchpin of the Danish approach is a huge amount of hand washing and sterilizing. Can you imagine? There is pretty much hourly washing going on, says Mr. Maher. So much so that the new problem now is skin irritation and eczema. But he says the idea of a perfect social distancing with small children is not realistic. Most of them are pretty good with it and mindful of space, but they do forget, he says. There are no face masks either for pupils or teachers. Dort Lang, Vice President of the Danish Union of Teachers, says this lack of personal protection hasn't been an issue because the medical advice has focused on the strategy of keeping pupils distanced in isolated groups and a strong emphasis on hygiene. We are glad to see the reopening up to now has been quite successful, the union leader told the BBC. Teachers who have health issues or who have family members who might be at risk can teach online from home, she says. But she suggests the mood has shifted towards wanting to get children into school again. We can see many of the older students are not thriving at home. They really need to be back in the community of the school, she says. There has been a collective approach to reopening between teachers and unions, local authorities and government, says Ms. Lang. If a further opening of schools were to increase the rate of infection, she says there would have to be a change of plan. But if they say it's safe to open for older kids, we'll make it possible. There are still worries among parents, including a Facebook page with worries about not treating children as guinea pigs. Siren posted to say she has kept her 4-year-old at home despite the reopening, but her daughters ask me every day when she's going to kindergarten again, and she misses her friends so much. So I thought about sending them off in about 2 weeks, since I don't think this virus will be gone for a long time and I have to start working at some point. Another mother says she feels pressured into sending her child into school. I'm not comfortable with it, she says, and I have my grandma who's on vacation with us. On Copenhagen's waterfront, there is one-way sign into a school, indicating the highly structured nature of the COVID-19 shaped school day. Ida Storm Jansen, an administrator in Copenhagen International School, says about 10 students were allowed per classroom. It's an international school, but all such schools have to follow their country's health advice. I had a great conversation with a 4-year-old. He said we used to sit on the carpet and now we sit on the tape marks, she says. The system of isolating these small groups of children is more practical than only relying on social distancing, she suggests. Frankly, it's impossible. When they play, of course, they forget, she says. But with constant hand washing and minimal contact with any other group, she says there is an effective system, and children have adapted to it very quickly. Mrs. Jansen says fears of a big backlash from parents over reopening didn't materialize, and children were relieved to be back with their friends. When some schools opened in Germany last month, the detail of planning went down to individual seating plans. Sean Roberts, principal of the Cologne International School, says there is a fixed place for each student, so that if someone is found with the virus, the contact tracers will know exactly who was sitting nearest. In Germany, it's the oldest year groups which have gone back first. The top class is revising for the Abitur, the German equivalent of A levels, which have not been cancelled. Exam halls are one of the few locations which lend themselves to social distancing. There is a one-way system in the corridors to minimize contact. Break times are staggered, where a strict cleaning regime and face masks are worn in common areas. People do what they have to do without making a fuss, says Mr. Roberts, but it isn't business as usual. The school days are shorter and mixed with online lessons, so different year groups can share classrooms which might now hold 10 pupils. And there are staff and pupils who are staying at home because of their health issues or because of concerns about someone in their family. The great unspoken, he says, is that schools might have to reopen, but there are limits to what can be provided. France and the Netherlands will be the next to open schools next week, with strong opinions for and against returning, and plans for schools in the UK will become clearer in the next few days. Mr. Roberts in Cologne describes it as a journey back to normality, which will continue long beyond the summer break and into the autumn. It might only be the beginning, but he says it has to start somewhere. So guys, what do you think? Do you think schools can have some form of normality or some form of education with kids trying to abide by the social distancing rules of 2 meters and, being isolated in different groups? What do you think about the isolation attempt? Do you think that the isolation is good for kids to have that, to understand how to do it? Do you think it's different for kids of different ages as well? Because obviously younger kids, they're going to start playing, they're going to want to touch, want to play, fight, they want to do what they want to do. And that's, that can cause the virus to spread. And what about staff? Because I work in a school and we've been trying to figure out how the best way to get back into work and get it, get pupils in. The more pupils you have, the more, the more the focus is on staff's health. How do you do break times? How do you do moving from lesson to lesson? And how much students you can actually have in school at one time? That's a major concern. Especially if you have a few numbskulls who decide that they're not gonna abide by the rules no matter what you say. They're gonna play fight. They're gonna want to maybe jump on your back and all sorts. And what can you do? What can you do apart from if they have an argument or have a fight? The staff's gonna have to get involved and get in the middle. Therefore, they're gonna come in contact with the kids and not social distancing. It's so difficult. It's such a difficult thing. And again, this whole washing the hands and using antibacterial wipes and so forth. Yeah, it's gonna be a minefield, guys. I don't know how it's gonna work. But listen, I want to get your thoughts, guys. If you want to say something, you can email me at gmthelifecoach336@gmail.com. That's gmthelifecoach336@gmail.com. Okay, you can contact me there and let me know what your thoughts are, and I can read them out on the show. Okay, but this COVID-19, it is a minefield, guys. It is such a minefield. But listen, keep safe, guys. Keep social distancing. Wash your hands, and just be careful wherever you go, whatever you do. All right. Take care, guys. Till next time. See you soon.